Doing a job without the best equipment can hamper the quality of life at work. This holds true for those who have to work outdoors in the cold, including our men and women in uniform. In this week's Those Who Serve, Crystal Quao headed to Minot Air Force Base to learn some innovative ways that members of Team Minot are helping everyone do their jobs amid the bitter North Dakota winters.
First Lieutenant Crystalyn Delph says aircraft crews can spend hours outside in negative temperatures working on jets.
Anytime that we can keep them off the flight line and not having to be out there on the jet is awesome.
She is part of the Ignited working group.
Basically, we're igniting innovation across the base.
Stephen Croft, 5th Contracting Squadron Commander, says the group was established at the end of 2021. It's made up of civil engineers, contractors who buy supplies, protocol personnel, and a group called Atomic Spark. He says when the Ignited working group asked squadrons for feedback, aircraft maintenance workers said they wanted better winter gear for themselves and a better aircraft engine heater. Croft says ice buildup can damage the engines for the B-52s, leading to repairs. He says one of the maintenance workers designed a solution to increase the engine temperature.
What we found is that the best innovations are typically ground up, it's grassroots from a troop that has identified an issue and a potential solution, and our job is to make their vision a reality.
Atomic Sparks is currently working on advancing the original design. The Ignited group has also provided battery-heated gloves and more agile tools. Delph says she enjoys how proactive the group is on the material aspect.
It's not something they can fix themselves, so they kind of sit back and suffer in silence, and that's what we don't want.
Croft says the development will help protect the engines, which range from $1 to $2.5 million. On Minot Air Force Base, I'm Crystal Quao reporting for your news leader.
The 5th Squadron Commander also says they've made a lot of progress in the new innovation for the last 18 months.